Hey, what's going on, guys? I have a new retro deck profile for you, and it's '06 Toolbox. I'm gonna say this right now. This was easily my favorite deck of all time. It was the most fun. I don't think I ever complained. I don't think there was anything I could complain about whenever I lost. I simply lost because someone outthought me, and that's basically what happened. So, let's go over the deck list, shall we? We start with 3 DD Assailant. This card was a promo back then, so it was hard to get, but it was such a good card. Now, I should have mentioned this before, but the point of a toolbox deck is so you have a monster for every single scenario. I'll be going over those. You have 3 Cyber Dragon, the big beater of the deck. You have 2 Reaper. It would stall, and you could also, hack at your opponent's hand. Mystic Swordsman level 2, it hit face downs. So like I said, here comes the toolbox for it. You have Exiled Force, get rid of any monster in a pinch. Breaker, that's not so much for the toolbox, but it still kills a spell or trap, so I guess you could consider it that. When Dawn Zalug hits a card out of your opponent's hand. DD Survivor, some people cited this, some people mained it, and the reason being, people used 3 DD Assailants. Perfect counter to it. People also had access of 3 bottomless trap holes. Summon this, you're looking good for the most part. Sangin searches out most of your cards. DD Warrior Lady, the card was only at 1 sadly, or else people would use 3. Magician of Faith. Every spell in this deck is, just broken beyond belief. Now, it wasn't horrible back then, so don't get me, don't take that in the wrong way, but, it was a power card. But what's cool in this sort of format, you could top deck the comeback. You can't OTK your opponent, and there's just tons of thought process with this deck, so that's just what makes it so great. You have Tsukiyomi. It got over basically everything. This thing was a Monarch killer because the attack 1100, all the Monarch's defense 1000. You could also use this to abuse your Magician of Faith. Some people use Dekoichi. It just got over a lot of your opponent's monsters. You could play Premature Burial or Snatch Steel, flip it face down, so then that way the equip would go, but the monster wouldn't. There was a lot of combos, and that's basically why the card is banned. It could come back, though. I'm just saying. It's definitely not... I mean, it is ban-worthy, but, if it stays banned, that's fine. If it comes back, I'm not going to cry about it. And your last monster, Mobius the Frost Monarch. Now, you're going to see, with my list, people didn't use Solemn Judgment back then. We had 3 copies. And no one even, thought to really main deck it. Why is that? Well, there was no broken plays back then. That is when the game was good. People did side Solemn Judgment maybe for stuff like Cyberstein and maybe, just really random decks, but for the most part, it was just Monarchs and it was Toolbox, maybe a mix of the two. There was, I think, Tomato Box, decks like that. I mean, there was nothing threatening. So, back then, people thought that paying half your life points, that was a lot. I mean, it is hefty, but don't get me wrong, Judgment is the most skilled card maybe of all time. Whether you want to believe it or not, it definitely is so. But it's just really interesting that a deck didn't even use the Judgments, and it was at 3. Crazy. Now, spells. You have 3 Smashing Ground. This whole deck is just 1-for-1s, constantly, just getting rid of your opponent's cards one by one. Back in this time, you didn't have ways to make +2s unless your opponent was just bad and they walked into, let's say, Mirror Force or Torrential or Dark Hole. I mean, if your opponent got a +2 on you, it's your fault basically. That's just how the game was. It was so fun back then. You have 2 Reinforcement of the Army. You have Dark Hole. You have Confiscation. You have Scapegoat. You have Book of Moon. Premature Burial. Nobleman of Crossout, MST, Heavy, Snatch Steel. That's his spells. Now, Nobleman of Crossout, that was pretty interesting. Like I said, basically every card was just like a power top deck, and every single card can get you out of whatever scenario basically, and that's what made this deck so powerful. I know I'm saying, fun and a whole, I'm saying that a lot, but it honestly was. It was easily the best time of my Yu-Gi-Oh life, without a doubt. On to the traps. You have Torrential, you have Call of the Haunted, sorry, you have 2 Widespread Rune. This was also a video game promo. It was a lot of money back then. You have 2 Bottomless Trap Hole, and you have 2 Sakuratsu Armor. So, that is the deck list, guys. Now, please note, back in 2006, you had no way to summon stuff from your fusion deck, in this format, I should say, besides Cyberstein. There weren't synchros, there weren't exceeds. It was just simple, raw, 1-for-1 advantage, and the best player always won. And that's the way it should be, but sadly we're not in those times anymore. This deck is 6 years old now. I would give anything to be able to play with this deck again. Maybe we'll get it one day, but it's a matter of there's exceeds, there's synchros. Rhoda can't go anything higher than 1 because of samurais and maybe destiny heroes. So this deck is basically extinct, and we may not, ever get a chance to have a deck somewhat like this, even at the minimum. So hopefully you guys enjoyed my profile. Let me know if you guys want me to do more retro deck profiles. I can throw more together. I have so many ideas in my head, but it'll come down to you guys, the viewers, if I should post more or not. That's all I have for you guys, and thank you for watching. Have a good day. Peace.